You're listening to episode 10 of the Spinning Wheels podcast. If you're listening sometime in the future, firstly, do not set your DeLorean to travel back to 2020. Waste of time. Secondly, I have to tell you that we've been recording these podcasts every week, pretty much every week, since the beginning of the lockdown, which basically means racing driver Guy Smith and I have been on a two-man mission to save your sanity with fascinating stories from behind the scenes of four-wheeled motorsport. Guy, last time we had Jason Plato talking of sanity. He was on top form.
Sanity, I would say more insanity. When insanity and Jason Plato go much better, but yeah, he was on good form, and what a character. In fact, I've actually downloaded his audiobook of his How Not to Be a Professional Racing Driver. I'm really enjoying that, and yeah, Jason was on really good form, and what a fantastic career he's had. He's done it. I wouldn't say he's done it the hard way, but he hasn't done it the traditional way. He's definitely law unto himself. But
not many people doorstep Frank Williams, though, do they?
Well, that's true. Not exactly. There's not really, but at the end of the day, he got him the drive, and is a double British touring car champion, and he's still going strong at 50. So, it shows that hard work does pay off.
Yeah, and we've had some great stories so far. If you are just listening to this podcast and it's the first one you've stumbled on, we've got a whole back catalogue, really, 10 podcasts now for you to listen to. You can watch them on YouTube, you can listen to them on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you follow us on Instagram, on Twitter as well, because we tend to wheel in a car relevant to our guest into the virtual studio on Instagram, which has been quite fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been great actually. We've had some great guests. I mean, I think we've just about covered all the bases, and it's great. Today's guest as well is fantastic. So we're looking at motorsport from a different angle, really.
We really are. We've done drivers, co-drivers, and now not all iconic motor racing victories take place on the racetrack or indeed on the rally stage. Some battles are fought and won in the boardroom. Quite often, history is made behind a desk before a racing car is even wheeled out of the transporter for the first time. And criminally, these are often the stories that go untold. But not today, because we're joined by the man who masterminded Bentley's return to Le Mans, the first man to take on the role of director of motorsport since the company's founder, W.O. Bentley, in the 1930s. Today, we return to the story of that famous victory from 17 years ago as we welcome Brian Gush to our virtual studio. Welcome to Spinning Wheels, Brian.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hi, Guy.
Yeah,
it's good to have you here. The stories behind the scenes, Brian, fascinate me. I said to you before we came on, I love the story of the British motor industry because of all these stories that came out years after, and people never knew about them because they happened behind these big wooden closed doors in the corridors of power. So you really do need to go behind those doors for us today and give us the story of that Le Mans return for Bentley, the return to motorsport, if you will.
Yeah. Well, maybe Brian, actually a good place to start would be a little bit about your kind of how you joined the VW group, because obviously you hail from South Africa, as we can tell by your accent. Maybe a good place is to start the journey, really, is how you sort of went through VW and ended up at Bentley, perhaps.
Okay, well, I started off with mechanical engineering, but my motorsport interests were always motorcycles. So I started riding motocross at the age of 16. Probably a bit late these days to start, but that's where I started. And I was just mainly interested in motorcycles, and then did mechanical engineering. Started off in the motor industry with a training period at Mercedes-Benz, and then joined Ford South Africa. And doing powertrain and chassis at Ford, I came across Bernie Mariner, who is fairly iconic in the world of rallying back in the day, and sort of the motorsport aspect of Ford in those days rubbed off on me, and I worked quite closely with the motorsport department, helping them build special engine blocks for the rally cars. And interestingly enough, we'll come on to it later, but that's where I met Malcolm Wilson for the first time when he came to drive the RS 1700T there. But my sort of introduction into motorsport programs was then building the Sierra XR8, which was a 5-litre V8 in the Sierra, as an homologation special for Group 1 racing back in the day. And there were some iconic cars built in South Africa: the XR8 Sierra, the 333 BMW, and a 3-liter GTV Alpha, all of them unique to South Africa and all built down there as homologation specials for Group 1 racing. So that was really my intro into motorsport within the company. And then when Ford divested their interests in South Africa, I moved to Volkswagen and started a long career with Volkswagen. Firstly in Volkswagen South Africa, also spent a period in Wolfsburg, and then as head of engineering Volkswagen South Africa, I was transferred to Bentley as engineering operations director at the end of '99, beginning of 2000. And that's probably where the Le Mans story starts, because joining Bentley, there were quite a few new guys joining the company, recently bought by VW, brought into the group.
It's a big time of change, wasn't it, for the group? Because obviously, BMW had bought or taken control of Rolls-Royce, hadn't they? And the VAG group had taken Bentley. So
yeah, that's a story. That's a podcast all in its own. The story.
The legend has it you found a dusty old race car that was half built, sat there waiting for someone to love it.
Well, what happened was my colleague Adrian Hallmark was then director of sales and marketing, and we had just put the Bentley engine back into the Enage, and we took some customers, and that's where the Le Mans story starts with Bentley. We were at the race, and I met compatriot Andre van der Walt there. Also, I knew Richard Lloyd, and deep into the night, we were talking about their plans. And what had happened was after the Audi introduction to Le Mans, and Richard Lloyd was instrumental in introducing Audi to Le Mans. He persuaded them to go from the touring car successes in the UK, and then the R8R and the R8C story had played out in '99, and Audi had gone for the R8R, the open car. The R8C then remained as a car that had been built by RTN in Norfolk. RTN, the facility in Norfolk, had been bought by Audi. They built the car with Richard Lloyd running the team, John Wickham involved. Tony Southgate designed that car with Peter Ellery working with him. And then the car was basically
Tony Southgate,
the project was scrapped. So
wasn't it Tony Southgate that designed the Toyota? Was it?
He designed the Toyota, and then I think he started off with the R8C.
Yeah.
And then Peter Ellery took over. So then what happened was in the VW group, Dr. Piech had already decided to or had the idea for the modular W12 and W18, W16, W12 and W8 engines, and he wanted the W12 to have a bit of a reputation. So Van der Walt, who was head of VW Motorsport, got the brief to build this to use a W12 engine in this R8C. Well, by the time they shoehorned this engine in, the engine was being developed in Wolfsburg, but it was a massive thing, a lot bigger than the Audi V8. And eventually, Van der Walt had been given the budget for this, and eventually, when they looked at the implications of fitting it in the car, they said to him, "Look, it's cheaper to build a new car, completely new car." And so they started designing a new car. And with the design team, hence a bit of similarity to the Toyota that you mentioned, Guy.
Yeah.
Of that first car in 2001. Anyway, the engine never made the power, ate up all the budget, and the program was canned. So Richard Lloyd and his team were, and John Wickham and the guys were helping Stefan Johansson. Van der Walt had canned the project, no engine, and the car was only half built. So we hatched a plan. Then I said, well, if we can get an engine approved, we could take over the project. And so then the next morning, about 9-10 o'clock, Richard Lloyd and myself went down to the RD10. I knew Dr. Pefkin from the days at BWSA, and I said to him, he knew that I was at Bentley. I said, look, there's a project that we could run if we could buy your engine, a customer Audi engine. And he laughed because Audi was running first, second, and third. He had a massive cigar, a big Stetson on, and he was in an expansive mood. And he said, yeah, if you can put in a German engine in a British car, then good luck to you. And so I said, okay, is that a deal if we shake on that? And he said, yeah, there you go. And we shook hands on the deal. Brilliant. And that's how we got the deal to build, to use the Audi engine. So that was in the morning, but we hadn't told anybody else yet. So I discussed it with Adrian on the way back from Le Mans. And then the two of us went in to see the CEO at the time, Tony Gott, and said, look, this is a plan. This could work. So he sent us down to Norfolk, Adrian and myself, to have a look at the project. And the project was just a kit of parts. They'd assembled a car with a Nicholson McLaren engine to try and get it to run, sort of to show that the budget had been used. And while I nipped up to the toilet for a quick comfort break, and in the toilet I meet Helmut Strocek. I said, "What are you doing here?" He had taken over from Bodebut as head of VW Motorsport. He said, "Well, I've come to buy this project because we're going to do a 24-hour record at Nardo." I said, "Come on, you can't do that. I want that." So there and then, just in Artien's men's room, we shook on the deal that he would walk away from it and we'd get it. Brilliant. And so that's how we got the project. We took it back to Bentley under strict secrecy. We then started funding the project from my engineering budget, put the car together, brought it up to crew in August 2000. Nobody knew about it, absolutely nobody. Only Adrian, Tony Gott, and myself knew about it at that stage. We put it in a room, and Dr. Pierre came to see us every month in those days. And I presented the project to him with the car in the room, a few slides. In those days, there were transparencies, an overhead projector. And I went through the project with him, and he said, he gave me, he said, I'll think about it. And that was the genesis of it. But that was only just the start, because that's when the boardroom battles started.
Well, I mean, it's a big commitment, isn't it? I mean, I can imagine from a financial point of view to make that commitment for effectively a new company starting almost from zero, to rebuild a company and then to sort of financially commit to a Le Mans program. It's a big ask, isn't it?
Well, it was quite critical that we established Bentley as a brand in its own right, and we had been discussing that as to what do you do to get Bentley onto the map and establish it, because when we started there, people said they worked at Royce's, If you answered, they answered the phone, Rolls-Royce motor cars. If you asked somebody, anybody who worked, they'd say, yeah, I work at Royce's. So Bentley was not at the forefront of everybody's minds. They were pretty upset that Rolls-Royce had left, and but Pierre was adamant that he had bought the right brand. But it's how do you get the brand to be acknowledged as an independent brand and come out of the shadows of Rolls-Royce. So Pierre certainly understood that motorsport could do that. The interesting thing from there was that I'd started working with Richard Lloyd. We'd meet every Friday at 12 o'clock. That's when the factory knocked off in those days. And we started doing budgeting. And with my engineering experience, I always did zero-based budgets. Said, right, what do we need? And Richard was pretty organized on that and got John Wickham involved. He said to John, come back from the US. I think he was working with Stefan over there.
And me.
And you, yes, of course, yeah. The blonde Guy Smith.
Yeah, right.
And then John came back, and we started hammering out a budget. And the budget was, I thought, well, it's okay. We went through everything, and it was a really, really meticulous budget, as only John Wickham can do.
Yeah.
And then, in my innocence, I took it to Wolfsburg. So Adrian and myself, this is still top secret now. Adrian, myself, and Tony went across to Wolfsburg, and we presented it, and that's when all hell broke loose. Firstly, I showed a picture of the car, and it was nothing like the R8C that they'd been given a budget to put this W12 in. It looked more like a Toyota than an R8C. So Winterkorn was upset about that. And it was, interesting enough, Bernd Pischerschweder's first day at work in the VW group. And of course, he had won them on with BMW in 99. And he said to me, Mr. Gush, only one thing is certain, is that you'll be back here, because if you don't win, you'll know all the reasons why you didn't win, and you'll come back. If you do win, you'll like the feeling so much that you'll also be back. So I really want to see a 5-year plan. So for me, that was a victory. I didn't get a no. And the critical thing in those situations is don't get anybody to say no. Just get to go back. So I got to go back. So I went back to Richard and I said, we've got to do a 5-year plan. Richard said, I've never seen a 5-year plan in motorsport. He said, mostly we work from year to year, and we're grateful we get a budget together for the next year. Anyway, so we said, well, 5 years is probably too much. We went back with a 3-year plan. But then that was also difficult, because what I hadn't done was check what my Audi and my VW colleagues had put in for budgets. And that's when things got tricky, because our budget was a quarter of what VW had put in to run Le Mans with the 12, and a sixth of what Audi had spent. So you can imagine there were some red faces run, because Audi was at the table and VW was at the table. There were some red faces. So I was told, you just can't do it for that. Sorry, impossible. Which I was a bit indignant, because my budget was carefully worked out. I said, yes, we can. And they said, no, you can't. You're going to just overrun the budget. You're just trying to get an approval. And then you'll come back for more. I said, I won't. That's the budget. Anyway, eventually, Adrian said, look, just add 10% to keep him happy, which we did. And we gave him back the 10% at the end of the year.
Did you really?
The budget was absolutely accurate.
Wow.
But that was the start of it all. And then we started recruiting drivers.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you had, because originally you had, you obviously had James Weaver was the sort of first guy on board, wasn't he? Because I remember when I came to meet with you guys, James was testing. That's when it had the Nicholson engine in, I think. I remember at the time. I remember a wet very wet Silverstone, and he was
Right, yeah.
around. And obviously, you had Butch Leitzinger, Andy Wallace, which I guess came.
Well, I inherited Stefan Otelli with the program because VW had contracted him as a test driver.
Yeah.
So I got agreed to take Stefan straight away. Richard had good contacts with James Weaver, so we pulled him on board.
Yeah.
And then also Andy Wallace. James put Andy Wallace on. So
yeah,
you're giving us the business side of things here, Brian, but you know, as a motorsport enthusiast and a fan watching this program from the outside and then watching, you know, the years before the victory and then the victory itself, there was a huge amount of romance and theatre to Bentley returning to Le Mans since the 1930s. Was that in your mind? Was that ever prevalent at this stage, or was it very much just let's get this thing off the ground from a business and from a technical point of view first?
Well, I was under a lot of pressure not to go in 2001. They believed we needed to do more testing and get and be absolutely certain of things, and only go in 2002. But my experience has always been you strike while the iron's hot. You've got an approval, you go for it. You never know what the business is going to do. If there's a downturn, you go with what you've got. And my view at the time was that the engine was good. We knew that. It had got a podium one, and we could use that. We knew that the gearbox was good because we were using the extract box as opposed to Audi running the Ricardo box. So we knew it was the package could do it, but we did not know where we would be. The expectations were enormous. And I think the rest of the paddock didn't know what to expect from us. With Martin Brundle on board, that was a good find or good recruitment, because Martin brought a real level of leadership. I think you'll agree, Guy. Those early days, and really was a good peddler. Really got the car to perform well, and made Audi sit up a note when we went testing with them. We shared a track and went testing, and that was probably a strategic error. But yeah, Paul, the pressure was enormous because nobody knew what to expect of us, and we turned up as new boys in the paddock. But you know, we had the livery was right. I used our stylists to do the livery. Raul Pires, Dirk van Brakel, Raul Pires did that livery, and that was really, really good. Harking back, not too nostalgic, but just the right level of nostalgia. We made quite a big thing about the specification of the 1930s. 1930s winner and this car, and we got a lot of interest, and you know, marketing, motorsport, we're all enthusiasts, but motorsport is essentially a business tool. You've got to use it to promote the business, and we were on a mission to make sure that Bentley got noticed. So the turnout of the crew, they were all immaculately turned out. Richard took a lot of time over our paddock gear. We had strict dress codes, make sure that everybody was keeping the name Bentley up there.
Because Bentley obviously had a very strong, well, arguably one of the strongest histories in Le Mans racing, because obviously with all the success from the famous Bentley boys, Bonato, Birkin, Davis, all those guys, I mean, absolute legends. And for Bentley to come back to Le Mans, I guess it was the absolute sort of perfect tool to sort of put Bentley's name back in the spotlight. And I know when I joined, I didn't really know too much about the Bentley boys, but I knew that it was in my interest, and I was curious to read about them and find out about the history, about what had gone before, because people say, no, you're a Bentley boy now. Well, that's great, but what is a Bentley boy? And then you read back about those guys, and they were absolute legends, because not only were they amazing racing car drivers. They were absolute playboys. They were fighter pilots. They were just absolute legends. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons what makes Bentley such a unique brand. And I think we were all very conscious about representing that. And I remember you saying in the marketing team, we're going to go racing, but we're going to do it differently. We're going to be Bentley. And like you said, the way that we dressed, the way the cars were presented, we'd have cucumber sandwiches and cups of tea in the hospitality, which is just very, very British, but it's got to be different and stand out from the crowd, which I think we did really well.
Well, the Bentley boys mixing their roles, Guy. At this point, we have to remember that, Brian, you were a director of the company. You were in charge of the road car operations as well as the race car operation. Was there any worry either on your part or the boss's part that you might just lose a bit of focus and your attention might be wholly on this Le Mans project? Because it'd be like a kid in a sweet shop having got the yes, surely.
Yeah. I was younger then than now, to paraphrase Bob Dylan. A lot of energy and a lot of effort, because we were in the middle, as you say, middle of the Conti GT program, which was something I also didn't want to give up. The mechanical side of that car was really important to the company, and the Le Mans program. It was a unique opportunity to do both the road car and the race car. There was a lot of pressure at times to jump in full time, but I also didn't want to lose the opportunity to develop the first car back, the first GT. But if you come back to the business side of it and what we were trying to achieve, we got that podium in 2001, which nobody expected. It really was out of the blue. We were ecstatic with the level of support we had from the colleagues from crew that traveled there. It was just incredible. Yeah. And when we got everybody referred to themselves working at Bentley. Slowly, the team gear sort of and the team colours were being worn. That people just overnight virtually started referring to themselves as working for Bentley. Yeah. And that's the power of motorsport.
It's remained as well. A really good friend of mine, Phil Bramhill, works for Bentley, and he knows you actually, Brian. He said he was quite excited we were talking, and I see that pride in him. And he went to that race, and he sent me some great photos of you actually. One on the Tour of Cheshire in a Lodesilan, no less. But he's he talks about Bentley as more than just a job. It's really nice to see. We all sit there and listen to his tales of motorsport, and he goes to the races with his kids, and it's a good lifestyle for the people who are working there.
It is a passion. It's an absolute passion. It's not just a job. It's a passion for the brand. And I mean, Guy, you're mentioning, the history that went before, and Bentley punches above its weight in terms of history. We've only at that stage only 5 victories, compared to Ferrari's 9. Porsche was already then on 12 or 13 victories. It was in the general scheme of things, very few victories, but as you say, the characters were larger than life. And we tried to portray that in everything we did, just doing it a little bit differently, making sure that everything was just a little bit more special. And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take massive budget to do that, as I was very proud to prove. And that was probably as good as the podium in 2001 was the fact that we stuck to the budget and didn't use the extra that we were told to put in.
Was that the end of your battles then? Do your battles stop with the podium and handing the budget back? Do you go into year 2 with a fresh lease of life and free reign to do what you want for year 2?
Well, you had to buy a new clutch. You had to buy a new clutch after 2001, after I fried.
Yeah. Well, I came to fetch Guy on the scooter.
Yeah, but Brian came to fetch me because obviously I was there, and that was my first, well, actually my second Le Mans. In truth, I was probably too inexperienced to be with a factory team. I'd only done Le Mans once before as a rookie, and we didn't finish. And Le Mans is a bit like as Brian said about a car, there's so many things that you learn by doing it. It's all about building up that sort of cookbook of information. And my cookbook was pretty thin at that point. And we developed a problem with the car in the race, because what happened was now Brian, correct me if I'm wrong while I'm talking about this, because you might know better than I do, but we'd had some brake cooling issues to the rear brakes. So we'd put some sort of like knacker ducts in to try and cool the rear brakes before the race. And there's also like an activator for the gearbox, which obviously signals the shift, which was also located somewhere in that kind of area where the sort of these knacker ducts were. And what we hadn't realized, because we're not really tested in the rain, we'd done a fair bit of testing, but it'd all been predominantly in the dry.
Not one day of testing in the rain.
One day, yeah. So of course in the coupe, there's things like, you know, do the doors leak? Do the seals leak? There's lots of things. The
wipers stay on the screen.
Exactly. Lots of things that you.
And did they?
Yeah, I mean, because when you're going at 200 miles an hour, the wiper actually starts to lift off the screen. So it actually doesn't really do a lot. And then it starts to fog up, and then water comes in. Anyway, it's one of those things that you only learn. If you were tested, you say, well, we need to do this, we need to sort this. But of course, we were in the race. So what happened was Martin was doing a sterling job. I think he was either leading or he'd led the race and was up at the front. And it started to rain, and he started to complain that he was having trouble with the shifting. But we hadn't really kind of figured out that it was due to the rain, that there was a gear shift problem. It was just, we thought it was just an electrical issue. Anyway, as the rain subsided, the shifting started to work again. So he's like, okay, I'm okay. I've got, the gears are working again now. So we thought, okay, it's fixed itself. So he did another stint, comes in. And as he comes in, I'm next in the car, and it absolutely pours down. So it absolutely pisses it down. And this is my first stint in a works car, with Bentley. And I get in. I think I must have left the pits in about third place. I was not, we were at the sharp end. And I think they put me on intermediates, because I think they thought it was going to be a shower, but around the rest of the track was dry. So we'll go on intermediates, and you might struggle for a couple of corners, but then you'll be fine. Anyway, I go up behind the pace car, and I go down the pit lane, and the wiper's on, but it's not doing anything. And then, because we've done a driver change and I've got in, it's now suddenly started to steam up. So the side windows were completely steamed up, and the front window was predominantly steamed up, apart from a small bit in the middle. So I'm driving down the straight, and I'm kind of like this, trying to look down the middle of the street. But I'm behind the safety car, but I'm on intermediates, and it's absolutely chucking it down. So I'm struggling to even keep up with the safety car. It's that bad. Anyway, long story cut short, it goes green. I don't know what happens, but we get running, and somewhere along the line in the stint, the shifting starts to play up again. So what ultimately ended up happening was I came down to Indianapolis corner into Arnage, which is probably the tightest corner on the track. It's the second gear in the dry. And I'd come down to Indianapolis in sixth gear, tried to downshift to get down to the lower gear into second, and it wouldn't downshift. So my inexperience was I tried to just go around the corner in sixth gear and try and get around it, which of course it couldn't do. And the engine stalled. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't downshift. So I try and start the engine, got the clutch in, try and start the engine, but I'm in sixth gear, and I'm trying to slip the clutch to get the car moving, to get the momentum going, to get back to the pits. And I kept doing this and doing this and doing this. And of course, ultimately, the clutch fried itself. I mean, destroyed itself. So the car's like virtually on fire. And of course, what Andy did, where Andy was a far more experienced driver than I was, he had exactly the same problem. Comes around Indianapolis in sixth gear, realizes he can't get down, just basically straight lines it, goes across the grass, keeps it going, goes through the Porsche curves, manages to get back to the pits. And of course, they're able to fix it because we know what the problem was. Whereas in our car, they couldn't fix it because numpty here couldn't get it back. So that's where the experience, really counts at places like and all endurance races, to be fair.
How tough was that moment for you, Guy? Did you think that could be dream over, or?
Well, it's not the ideal. It's not the ideal debut, is it? But at the end of the day, it was just lack of experience. But I mean, luckily, the other car got a result and got on the podium, and the drivers all dressed up with all the goggles and all the sort of the like boiler suit things, and actually managed to get a great result. So I think that definitely helped, take some of the pain away for sure.
Just talk us through the feeling of getting back into the pits. Just for someone who's not been there, you guys have been at Le Mans, you've competed at the sharp end, you've won Le Mans. Just tell us what that feels like. Tell us about the emotion of that moment. You've cooked the clutch. You're walking back to the pits.
He's not walking. I'm driving him on a scooter.
Brian came and collected me. I think I was probably pretty upset. But I think it's a good question. It's a hard one to explain. I think I have so many different emotions because, of course, there's all the testing that's gone on. There's the build-up of the week. You know, you're tired. You've had the highs of the race, the lows. There's so much going on. It's difficult to pinpoint one emotion because I think there's lots of emotions. I think just disappointment, great disappointment. But you know, that's
there's no clear evidence that the car could have got going. If we got back to the pits, maybe we could have changed the compressor. What was the compressor? The hydraulic locked had drawn in so much water. I don't think Le Mans has ever seen conditions like that. There's some pictures with a bow wave coming down the side of the car.
Yeah.
And this was going in this knacker duct that guy was talking about, and just the compressor was locking up solid.
Yeah.
So on the other car, we actually put a little cap on with an inlet facing backwards, which saved it.
Yeah.
But we didn't know what was going on at the time.
Yeah. But for 2002, obviously continue with the same car. But tell us a little bit about the decision to go to one car from two to one.
Well, there were a lot of changes, quite a few boardroom changes then. So what happened in the boardroom, we were pretty unhappy about our level of performance. We felt that we weren't getting as much as we could out of the engine. But this is what happens when you buy a customer engine. We bought probably the best engine on the grid for sure in terms of reliability and performance. But when the manufacturer's running it, I think it's a little bit like Mercedes GP F1 and Williams and the other Mercedes customer cars.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a custom engine, so we made a few decisions right after the race. I decided I wanted something that was very much more specifically Bentley, and asked Ulrich Beretsky to design or change the engine to make it a bespoke Bentley, which was then making it going from a 3.6 litre to a 4 litre. And also we bought the engine, which was interesting the way Audi did it. I had the agreement with Pefkin to buy the engine, so I bought enough engines for the program, for my 3-year program. But of course, they didn't tell me that they had a direct injection engine in the pipeline, so I bought port injection engines because I didn't know that they had the other engine. They didn't tell me that the other engine was running. So they pitched in 2001 with a direct injection. We were with a port injection. So I said, that enough of that. Now we want to go to 4 litre with a direct injection. So we separate ourselves out. That was the one decision that was made. The other decision was that Audi had also got a 3-year plan approved, and they wanted to run a 3-year win, take the trophy home, and then do something different. And the boardroom change was that Dr. Pefkin, as chairman as chief executive of Audi, was then transferred to Bentley as chairman and chief executive. So he moved from being responsible for the motorsport at Audi to being responsible for the whole of Bentley and the motorsport department. So I was called in to explain myself, and he said, well, given what you've experienced to date, can this car win? And I said, well, we really need a completely new car, and not a development of this. We had to change some things in the 2002 car for regulation change. And we were pretty far down the line when he came on board. So he said, right, here's the deal. You're planning 2 cars again. in 2002, you cut down to one car and halve the budget. So, well, sorry, that doesn't work. You cut down to one car, and maybe you can take 10 or 20% out of the budget. But anyway, again, you just don't pick up a no. You say, right, I'll have a go. I'll try, but I can't promise I'll try. And that was then we took the program down to one car to save money, and Martin had his Formula One commentary commitment, so he dropped out. Stephen Kelly only had 1 year contract with us, and then we had the young Guy Smith.
And I was a lot cheaper.
That's when he gets you ride the clutch.
Yeah, but you see, for me, that the thing for me was, I remember obviously when they went down to one car, and to get the between Brian and Dr. Pefkin to keep me on as a test driver, it was still a great opportunity, because they knew that they knew what was coming down the line. They knew that whatever they were going to do, it was going to be done right, and the potential was there. So to be the test driver, while it was disappointing not to be racing, it allowed me to get a load of experience, loads of driving, loads of sports car driving against some of the best in the world. And I actually sort of needed that seat time without the pressure, just to go and test. And actually, it was really good for me. And it allowed me to spend a lot of time in the new car and have a handle on the new car to get up to speed. So I think so. How did they do that year? They came. Was it fourth that year?
We got fourth that year. That was Audi's swan song with the R8. They wanted to really make an impact, so they pulled out all the stops, and ostensibly they were going to stop after that, and that was the Pefkin what Pefkin had said, and so we were happy with the fourth place, and we were proving out the new engine, the 4-liter engine. The gearbox was bulletproof. We didn't have to worry about trying to change engines and gearboxes within seconds, because we didn't need to. That was one of the first questions I was asked by Pefkin when he came in. He said, "So how long does it take you to change the gearbox?" I said, "Well, we don't know. We haven't really done one under race conditions because we don't have to."
Because the Audi was famous for being able to change it in minutes, wasn't it?
Because they had to.
Do you remember that year, Brian? Do you remember Morgan having a problem, and I was there at that race, and they were in for 4 hours in the garage changing their gearbox? Do you remember that?
Right, yeah.
I remember being fascinated as a kid that this car could be in the garage for 4 hours and then still go out in the race.
Yeah. Well, Audi had it down to a fine art. They were just changing the whole back end, and with the gearbox change came your back two corners. So the dampers, the brake discs, the calipers, everything on dry brakes, and it went. It was amazing. They even had it down to warming the whole rear end in blankets because of the differential expansion. Putting a cold gearbox onto a hot engine didn't work. They had to get it up to temperature.
That's the thing with a good Le Mans car, because the speed is obviously important, but you've got to think about all those things, haven't you? Because if you do need to make if they have a gearbox failure, which they probably they did, it didn't necessarily put them out of the race. They could change it within minutes and actually keep themselves within the race. And again, if we talk about the 2001, 2002 car, I think the general feeling of the car was it's got a fast lap in it, and it's a pretty good car. It's a pretty good car, but it's not a Le Mans winning car. It's not an endurance car, because it wasn't easy to drive. And it was tricky. And what you need at Le Mans is you need a car that's good in all conditions, whether it be wet, dry, hot, cold, and easy to drive and to be quick. And I think that was the general feeling, wasn't it, Brian? That while the previous car was quick on a lap, it wasn't necessarily a Le Mans winning car.
Yeah, and it was this level of concentration you needed to keep it going. I remember being taken out. I think you took me out in the 2-seater once, and it was leaping from side to side about a meter across the road when the tires were cold.
Yeah.
And I remember Dr. Pierre telling me in one of the reviews. So every month I had to report to Dr. Pierre as to what we were doing in the Le Mans program. and he said, so how are you keeping your drivers concentrated throughout the race? And I said, well, I think they fit and they'll be concentrating. He said, so what about air conditioning? And I didn't need that. I didn't need to put air conditioning in. And I said, well, I'll look into it. Well, sorry, Guy, I never did.
You know, but to be honest with you, it was never. I don't ever really remember it being a big problem. You know, having done the sort of GT racing and driven other cars since then, I've had much more, you know, issues with heat than in that particular car. So
it would have been very Bentley, though, wouldn't it? Would have been very Bentley to have aircon.
It would have been, yeah, it would have been nice.
Yeah.
They'd have gone with the cucumber sandwiches.
Exactly.
Yeah. But when I went and asked the Porsche guys whether he really did have air conditioning in any of the 917s, I said, don't be crazy, he never did.
Yeah.
But he was quite a formidable guy to report to in those early days.
Because I guess Pieck, obviously, you know, he kind of had a bit of that mystique, a bit like an Enzo Ferrari, wasn't he? I mean, he's an incredibly powerful guy certainly within the industry. You know, a brilliant engineer, and you know, he kind of ruled the roost, didn't he?
Incredibly knowledgeable, and ruthless, absolutely ruthless. When he started speaking very, very quietly, you knew you were in big trouble. And when his black book came out and he wrote something in it, then you really knew your
Didn't you say he'd ask you a question, and if you didn't know the answer, if he asked you again and you didn't get it right, you were fired.
Yeah, then I'll find somebody who does know the answer.
Yeah,
that was the standard one.
Yeah,
and then in the race, if there was a problem, if you did not know the answer, what was causing it, he didn't. He didn't expect you to have the solution, but you needed to know what the cause was. It was a very demanding guy, but driven, absolutely driven.
Yeah.
The
podium.
Sorry.
Taking your podium at race 1, race 2, you've scaled the program back a bit, and you're starting to build for the future. Was there still the boardroom part of this story? Was there still politics and things to overcome before you came out for 2003?
Oh yeah, big time, because that's when that was really quite a lot of politics then. So if you picture the scene, Audi have now won the race 3 times in succession. They've taken the trophy home. They're planning on doing this diesel. So they put everything into that. But Reinhold Just was running the team, and so Audi was prepared to let customer teams run the R8, which was a developed car, could win the race as well, for sure, in customer hands. So you had Audi UK with Velox, you had Team Go. They all had the R8 as a weapon. So the competition was there. But with us designing the 2003 car, and we managed to keep it on the island, doing it in the UK with RTN, with the design team at RTN, you had quite a few, you had Reinhold Just saying, well, yeah, Dr. Ulrich wanted to keep Just, because when they reeled out the R10, they wanted to have Just running it. Just didn't want to sit out. So we had a meeting in Ingolstadt. I'll never forget it. It was in November 2002. And I said, right, so which members of the team are you going to take? And that's when we had the pick of the Just guys. And who wouldn't take a guy like Ralf Juttner? A really, really experienced race engineer. You wouldn't refuse him if you've got this focus of winning the race. You just take the best people available. So we were able to take drivers. So we took in Dindo and Tom. We took guys like Ralf Juttner. We took a number of the key guys, but also intermingled them with the team that we had running, because we had stood down a few guys in 2002 running only one car. And that was a mixture, and that was quite an interesting behind the scenes meeting where you're going through your guys. You had to decide, you only had so many that you could put into the team, and you had to put names in boxes. So it wasn't only the drivers, you've got 6 drivers there, that hits the highlight, but all the way down this team structure, you've got names, and everybody is as passionate about being in an organization chart as the driver is about being in the cockpit. So, and it's absolutely critical, as you know, Guy, to have the right people in the right job at that race.
Yeah. Of course, they brought that level. That I guess one thing that they brought is their experience, but they're also proven winners. So it brings that level of confidence as well, because it's kind of like, well, we've done this before and that's not worked, so we did this and we've done that, and this is what you need to do, in this situation. So I think it brought that level of confidence, that experience into the team, and gave us that probably a little leg up as well. And of course, in sort of tandem with that, we were developing the car for 2003, which clearly was a step forward from the first off. It was a fast car like the previous car, but it was an easy car to drive, in the respect that it was like, this is quicker, and it's doing it with probably 30% less effort. And so we knew at that point we were kind of onto a winner. And not only that as well, we've been previously running on Dunlop tyres, hadn't we, Brian, in 2001, 2002? Right, yeah. And is that because do we run Dunlop because of the relationship with the road car side of business, or
no, not at all. Again, it was what do you need to win, and that was also something that Pierre told me right at the beginning. He said, what tyres are you using? And I said, well, we're not looking at the cost of tyres to make a decision. We're looking at who can give us the best tyre. Yeah. And in the 2001 deal, we got a really good development deal with Dunlop, which was critical, because we wanted to do a lot of testing, and we wanted somebody who could build a bespoke tyre for our car.
Yeah.
And that's what Dunlop did for us. But yeah, there's nothing like the experience of Michelin. So
I remember doing the first test with Michelin at Snetterton, and it's interesting because where the Michelin is really good, or was really good, and it's still actually true to this day. To be honest, it's with the Michelin tire, you can with a Dunlop, for example, you can brake in a straight line, and you can accelerate in a straight line. But if you try and put any lateral load on it, the car didn't really like it. Whereas with the Michelin, you could brake all the way into the corner. And also when you went to power, you could still have lock on and you still had good grip. And that's where the Michelin was, it could just allow you to roll more speed through the corner over the Dunlop. And we picked up probably a second and a half a lap around the short circuit like Snetterton. So of course, when we get to Le Mans, that adds up by probably, by 4 or 5, times. So, the fact now we've got a good car, we've got the right tyres, we've got a team that's got the experience. It was all starting to build, wasn't it? That confidence was building. We were starting to think, actually, we really have got something here that we can take.
And also keeping it in house and not letting these guys that they had a lot of experience, but they also still had to do it the Bentley way. We didn't allow.
Brian, let's talk about Sebring. Behind the scenes at Sebring, because I remember, so basically the way that it was kind of what ended up working out was I was obviously with Tom and Dindo in the kind of sports car driver's car, and the other car was the F1 driver's car with Johnny, David, and Mark, and so the car 7 was kind of ran more by the Yost guys, and car 8 was predominantly ran by the RTN guys, and I remember it being quite a prickly week. And what I say prickly is there's a lot of kind of everyone trying to wind everybody up in a competitive way. But we all knew that we had a chance. and we were going to be competitive. So the drivers were winding each other up, but in a good way. You know, there was a lot of banter, but there was definitely some winding up. And also with the teams, you know, it was like, well, Yost were like, well, we need to do this on the car. And the UK guys, well, we're going to do this on the car. And there was definitely some competition building. And it definitely seemed like World War III was about to break out at some point.
It started a bit before that, Guy, because you remember that Johnny Herbert crashed into the wall at Therese.
Yeah.
So this was just before Sebring. We have a major shunt, and we only had 2 cars, so we had to build another car very, very quickly. Anyway, we started that. We kicked it off. New monocoque in the cutting room being laid up, and the schedule was really, really tight. And then we had all these guys coming over on a Monday and going back on a Friday, and then all of a sudden there was a German public holiday, and half the team disappeared. Right. Building a car, and that threw the schedule out and said, no, guys, sorry, this is a British program, and you run to British time. There's not a British public holiday. There's not a bank holiday here. And so they all went. So we said, okay, right. And we split the team. And so we put all the guys onto the car that needed building quickly, which was the car 7, your car.
Yeah.
And ended up and that's how, and that car then got built. And then the teams, when the other lot, the Yost guys came back, there was this split, which I never told Pefkin about, because he would have strung me up for that.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to see that division. But it worked very well, because there was this inter-car rivalry. You know, if you look at some of the videos of the windscreen cleaner, even the two cars, windscreen cleaners, were having their own little competition. And you could walk into the garage and say, well, I see, not as tidy on that side as this side. Man, you'd see them jump into action. So there's a lot of competition all the way down. You don't, I think, you don't always see how much of a competitive spirit there is in the team all the way down.
Yeah. Because this didn't really come out. We've talked to Mark Blundell about this, of course, and we were talking to Derek Bell about this, and it hasn't come out. They haven't talked about this that much, Brian. So it's good because Guy was very quiet when they talked about inter-team rivalry. In fact, there was a question directly on this. Do you remember, Guy? In the Mark Blundell podcast, I think Jonathan Tuckwell asked about the team rivalry, and they both just went, "Yeah, a bit of friendly rivalry," and then we moved on. I thought there must be something.
Well, I think there's always rivalry between cars. I mean, obviously, we both got the same car, and I think as time went by, we knew that we both were going to be in with a chance of winning, and it would come down to relatively fine margins. And I think everybody just became more focused, and probably in a positive way, because I think. Yeah. Everybody in the team wanted to win. There was nobody. We weren't carrying any dead wood. We were fairly lean and we're fairly mean, but everybody there wanted to be there and wanted to win. And that's the difference. You know, you can only do it with good people and good team. Good team of people. You know, as drivers, you know, we do the best that we can, but we're only as good as a team. And if the team are pushing, then it makes us want to push more, and everybody motivates each other. And it's quite considering that. We only did 2 races, really, in that scenario. Yeah. You know, normal teams can take years to develop.
Yeah.
We actually had a group of people that were, a group of winners, really, when all said and done.
The critical thing, as you mentioned there, is keeping it positive. So the competition is good as long as it's positive. If the competition gets negative, then you've got trouble in team management. And we were able to keep it as positive rivalry. There were the odd issues here and there, but it was the information always had to be shared because the team was above everything. So if one car had a problem, the information had to be shared, the setup had to be shared.
Yeah.
And the engineers talking, and that's where Ralph Jutner's so good, as he stood between the 2 race engineers and made sure that they communicated with each other.
Yeah.
And kept the info flowing. but and we were able to keep it positive.
We did a lot of testing, Brian, didn't we? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how many we did, but I'm guessing we must have done 2 or 3 30-odd hour tests.
Well, we kept on with those 24-hour tests, as just carrying on and grinding through it. And if you've got a problem and you change a component, then you do another 24-hour test until it's right. And I always remember Jean Todt, and I used to explain this to quote Jean Todt to Dr. Pefkin when he asked me why we were testing again. Jean Todt did 9 24-hour tests for their win with Peugeot.
Really?
9.
Wow.
Yeah.
But preparation is the key, because when you arrive at the circuit, you feel nothing's a given, is it? But at the end of the day, it's all about preparation.
Yeah.
And
no part should be on the car that hasn't done 24 hours.
Yeah.
At least, and we test for 30 hours to make sure. And a lot of that we carried over into the GT program. Yeah.
So what kind of pressure were you feeling when Le Mans, when the race was coming up? I mean, obviously we all felt the pressure, but I mean, obviously from your point of view, it's year 3. You've kind of you sort of said you're going to win Le Mans. You've got the car, your new car, you've got everything in place. I mean, what kind of pressure were you feeling at that point?
Yeah, well, difficult to describe. You end up by just going over everything again and again and again to make sure that everything is right. You've covered all the bases. You've got to rely on your team. You've got to empower the team, and then let them get on with it. And I think we had established throughout the year that the guys knew what they were doing. Sebring was important to settle the team down. After Sebring, I think things got a lot better.
Oh, really good, actually. Everyone got along really well, actually.
Yeah, and Sebring was really sort of a culmination where we had a massive problem in the scrutineering, where the Americans measured the car in one way. We didn't think it was that bad. There was a bit of a bump in the floor pan, and they decided that because if you hold the straight edge up one way, the diffuser was too high, and we pointed out if you hold it the other way, the diffuser would be in spec, but they weren't having anything of it. The cars were put to the back of the grid. But then I think after that, everybody just got down to it and did the best for the team. Yeah, still keeping that sort of intercar rivalry going, but the healthy rivalry. And by the time we got to Le Mans, we were so well prepared. So yeah, the pressure was there, but again, Le Mans is a race that lets you win. There's a great saying at Pikes Peak. Their motto, the event motto, is "The mountain will decide."
Yeah.
And it is very similar to Le Mans. The race will decide, and either the race comes to you or it doesn't.
I remember Dr. Pefkin saying before the race, kind of a pre-race briefing, his kind of saying was, we must finish first and second. And it wasn't like, it's like...
I climbed under the table for that. I really...
kind of like, I remember it so well, and it was like, no pressure, but it's incredibly difficult to predict, because even when you're as prepared as we were, anything can go wrong, can't it? As we well know. But I mean, fortunately for us, we had certainly in our car, we had a pretty much trouble-free run. And I remember it being Joe Hausner, who was our engineer, was incredibly calm, and with Ralph Yuttner. I mean, Joe was one of those guys as engineer. You could go on the radio and say, "Joe, my wheel's just fallen off." And he'd come on the radio and say to you, "Well, you'll actually be faster with 3 wheels than you are with 4, and you believe him. you go quicker." And so he was really good, particularly for me, being the kind of young guy in the car. He was very good at keeping it all calm and level. Because obviously there's a lot of pressure when you're racing for the other thing is doing Le Mans hard enough, but when you're racing for the win, and you're at the front of the field, it's a lot different pressure to if you're kind of running 4th and 5th, and because you can only mess it up at that point. So. But I mean, our car ran well, and obviously car 8 had a couple of small problems, really. I mean, by Le Mans standards,
Le Mans standards, it was also relatively minor. But I mean, you only had 17 seconds of unscheduled pit stop.
Yeah.
So the race, the synthetic race that had been planned out ahead of time, it was only that 17 seconds where you had an overpressure. Came in, pulled the decal off. let the pressure out and went out again.
Yeah. So how did you feel after the win? Big relief?
Oh yeah, well, it's one of those life experiences you can't repeat. Standing on the podium, as you know, looking down on that sea of supporters. Amazing relief.
Yeah.
But that's what it shouldn't. It shouldn't be relief. It should be joy. And I think if I compare the 2001 podium to the 2003 podium, there was probably more joy in the 2001 because nobody expected it of us, and nobody knew where we would be or what we would do. And the 2003 podium was relief.
Satisfaction as well. Must have been really satisfying to have done that, because you nailed your colours to the mast originally and said, we will do this, when other people, it seems like from listening to you, other people didn't quite believe that you would.
Well, there was always that question, and motorsport's a fickle mistress. You can do whatever you like, as you know, Guy, and it's a race, and things happen. So you couldn't predict what was going to happen, but you could only just do your best to make sure that everything went right, and then you've got to say, well, if there's an incident, because you just have to have a GT car turning in and they haven't seen you, and that's the end of your race. However many 24-hour tests you've done, however prepared you are, it happened. But you've got to just make sure that then no problems will occur that are not fate or racing incidents.
It all came down to that final 24 hours of this 3-year program. But actually, going back to what we said originally, Guy, the battles in the boardroom, the ones that people don't get to hear about, the victories had been won earlier on. And any one of those meetings that you'd had, Brian, when you were heading off to wherever you were heading off to, whichever corridor of power you were walking down with your file of paperwork, if one of those meetings had not gone right, then that 24 hours wouldn't have happened.
That's like an incident on the track. Because if I'd been in that boardroom in Wolfsburg, where we had Pierre Winterkorn and Pischerieder, if one of them had said, no, you're not doing that, we've invested €1 billion in this company, and we're not going to go motor racing. Anyone had said that, the program would have been dead in the water. We wouldn't be sitting here today talking about it. And it's as much as a crash on the track, getting the wrong answer. And I always said to my team, and I stand by it, is don't pick up a no. Always fight for coming back, do some more work, do some more homework, do a little bit more of a study. Don't get a no in the boardroom. Always pick up a yes, okay, if we do this, we could get it right. We could maybe do it. And it applied to going to Pikes Peak, doing the ice speed records. They all risk the brand, because every time you go onto the track, every time you do something like that, you're nailing the brand's colors to the mast, and you will be, the brand will be judged by your performance. So you've got to get everything right, and make sure that you don't do the brand a disservice. So that's the pressure, really.
And then you were sort of fast forward 10 years later, and they were once again trying to persuade people that Bentley could make a pretty decent racing car. Everything you've been through, you had to go back to the boardroom and persuade them all again.
Well, that was another interesting saga. We tried very hard to go back to Le Mans, and I had Dr. Pefkin with a pen in his hand to sign a contract. And then the 2008 crash came, and we just couldn't do it. So we were really close to doing it, and then pulled the plug on that, which was a real shame. And then after that, the rules changed, and probably couldn't have afforded it after that when the hybridization came in. So then we had the situation where manufacturers are getting more and more interested in GT racing, GT3. Our car is a four-wheel drive and didn't comply with GTE regulations. But back then, GT3, as a tuner, you could enter a GT3. So you could homologate, build, homologate, and enter GT3 as a tuner. And I remember clearly there were things came to a head when there were 3 Corvettes being built to different specifications by 3 different tuners. And eventually it's well, how would you work? Can you imagine Claude Simon trying to do a BOP on 3 different cars of the same brand guy?
Yeah.
But GT racing then looked like the right forum to get back into motorsport with the company being contested, GT3 being contested by 12 OEMs. There's no other series in the world that has 12 manufacturers competing. So it was quite attractive. But whilst tuners were getting involved, we had some tuners asking us whether they could use the car, and rather than let them just guess specifications, we helped them quite a bit. But then in helping them, they then submitted some plans to the FIA that were just so crazy that the FIA wrote a strongly worded letter to Bentley MD, which was Durheimer at the time, and said, this is just nonsense. What is your company doing? What are you allowing? These are DTM cars, because they were just space frame silhouettes. And I got summoned to Wolfsburg to explain myself. And that's when a stop was put to it. Just said, look, tuners will not develop this car. So I said, and I was under a lot of pressure just to can the whole thing, and said, no, this is where we should be. This is where a brand, you've got Lamborghini, you've got Ferrari, you've got Porsche, you've got McLaren. They're all out there with their flagship models and racing on an equal footing, with the BOP. This is where we should be. But having been shot in the foot by a tuner, we had a real upward battle to try and convince the FIA. So I, again, in this boardroom meeting where I was told, look, you've embarrassed the company now with this tuner's submission. I said, right, well, give me a chance to just talk to the FIA and explain to them what we could do as a manufacturer. I contacted Stefan Rattel, got his approval that this could work if the FIA approved, and then assembled a team to put the plans together. Or they were not cutting metal at all. I had to promise that I wasn't going to build any cars in secret in some corner of the workshop and use company resources for that. But so everything was done in the virtual world. And then I got the FIA across, and we went through how we would build the car. And it was really a great demonstration where we stripped the car in the virtual world, showed them all the weight of the components that were coming out and what we were putting back in. And they were amazed, and they got hold of Durham and said, we are absolutely impressed with what the team have done, and we think we'll approve this as a GT. So it came from them. It wasn't me going back saying, look, give me a second chance to put things right with the FIA. They went to Durheimer.
Yeah,
it was quite political, wasn't it?
And that really then swung it. And he said, okay, you've got 3 months to prove it can be done.
Yeah, and of course, Durheimer, who was the CEO of Bentley, was previously at Porsche, and he's a kind of motorsport fan anyway, isn't he? So he's always into racing, and so I think he was a good CEO to have at that time, because he was going to be supportive, assuming that the car was eligible to race. And I guess with the Bentley, you know, with the GT, Continental GT, to get the weight out, it's things like, you know, all the leather, the wood, the electronics, everything that makes it a Bentley, pretty much. You take all that luxury out, but actually got the weight down of the car to, what was it, 1300?
Yeah, 1300 was the generation one.
Yeah.
But, you know, Dohammer didn't believe it could be done. You know, this is where I got my 3 months. I said, I will show you that it can be done. We've done it in the virtual world. Now we'll continue and we'll show you it can be done. And he said, okay, you've got 3 months to do it. And that's, we kicked off. And the danger there is you've got a guy who's had the resources of Porsche behind him. And, you know, where you can have budgets hidden everywhere. But in Bentley, we were pretty exposed. We were running on very, very thin budgets. So it was important to get it absolutely right. And Daham was very, very demanding in terms of what he wanted, because he had this Porsche template, and Porsche are probably the most successful customer racing company around. And so once we had convinced him, then he was our biggest fan. But it took some convincing. And again, Paul, if he had said no, that was it. That was the end. It would have been like a racing incident where your car, DNF.
So Brian, so just tell us a little bit about, obviously, you know, M Sport was chosen to design, build, manufacture the GT3. How did that come about, and why M Sport?
Well, firstly, with GT3, none of the OEMs who are building these cars do it in-house. I think not even Ferrari is doing it in-house. Everybody has a technical partner because the cars are so different. Well, Porsche does it, but the body shell goes down the line and has the cage fitted. But you need a technical partner to develop the car. You can't do it on the production line. So we were looking for a technical partner. But again, like at Le Mans, we go racing, but you've got to go racing as Bentley. And so it's doing it in a Bentley way, not the way everybody does it. Because the company's name is at stake. You've got to hold the reputation up. And, you know, you don't want to get beaten by anybody. But it's really the way you do it, the way you go about it. So we were looking for partners to go with, and we were talking to a number of people. But you know, when you find that they're also doing a GT3 for another manufacturer, and you say, well, hang on a minute, that's not exclusivity. The brand needs exclusivity. So I looked around a lot as to who could do the job, and we're, as Bentley, we're members of the MIA, the Motorsport Industries Association, and we're the only manufacturer. Bentley's the only manufacturer that's a member of that, and that gives you a really good overview of the industry in the UK. And when I'd exhausted all the race shops and the manufacturers, the race car manufacturers building cars that looking for the exclusivity, I decided to start looking for something else, somebody who builds a really strong steel monocoque, and you know, people who are looking at reliability. So then I started looking in the rally world, and ProDrive were doing something similar with Aston. But again, ProDrive, you could have gone there, but you're looking for exclusivity. They exclusively Aston. And I then looked at Malcolm's operation and decided to give him a ring and talk to him about it, and said, look, you know, are you able with your Ford contract to get involved in GT3 racing? And there's a bit of a silence on the end of the line. He admitted later that he didn't know what GT3 was as a category. But Malcolm being Malcolm, you know, and always he's an absolute competitor and a total racer, you know, he just said, yeah, absolutely.
It's
So
interesting, isn't it? Multimatic, we're doing the Fords, and yet Malcolm's doing a Bentley from M Sport.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, we went up and had a look with the team. I didn't tell them where they were going because I didn't want any preconception. And we went up and had a look around, and the guys just said, yeah, okay, this is the place. This is where Bentleys can be built. And I mean, it's a fantastic operation. It's got all the Bentley values about it. It's the attention to detail in the place was just Bentley through and through, and they embraced it. They took on the spirit of the brand. The cars were developed as strong, robust cars. I mean, our first race at Monza, guy's teammate tried really hard to bend it. It just in qualifying, Stephen was really pushing hard, and
Stephen Kane, yeah.
Yeah, so Stephen was telling. So basically, Brian, at the end of 2013, Brian called me. I was walking the dog and sort of asked me if I would be interested in rejoining Bentley again. And of course, you know, for me it was a no-brainer to be back with Bentley again. But of course, it was with a GT car, which I'd never even driven a GT car before, so it was a completely new experience. But I kind of, once we got going into the testing, I mean, I could do so much, but I was learning as much as the team were learning about GT3. So I brought in Stephen Kane, who I'd driven with previously, he'd driven for Nissan the previous season. So I had a pretty good knowledge of GT3 cars, and particularly front-engine GT3 cars. And he came in and was really kind of quite instrumental in helping us get up to speed, or get the program up to speed, and you know, great driver. And we also brought in Andy Merrick, and that was the sort of formation of Car 7. But I remember being at Monza, and Stephen was doing the track walk, and he was telling us about the particular corner. I can't remember the name of the corner now, but the chicane anyway. And he was saying, "Oh, you have to be really careful here, because if you hit the curb too much, the car rotates and you end up in the wall." So he's like, "Oh yeah, we'll be careful, be careful." And of course, he goes on qualifying, the same corner, stuffs it into the wall that he'd just been telling us about. Of course, all the M Sport guys were winding him up. So you know, they put like an invoice on the car the following morning. So when we arrive at the race, Malcolm said, "Here's your invoice." It was, you know, £70,000. You know, as only Malcolm can do.
Yeah, I can
I think
imagine.
he was half serious, to be fair.
Yeah, it probably was.
The interesting thing was the car was a mess. It was an absolute mess, and competitors, you know, McLaren guys walked past and just said, "Oh, sorry about that. That's you know, a DNS. Yeah. You know, your guy's not going to start." And that's where the team and the choice of a rally team really came into its own. These guys are used to putting cars straight, and you know, they worked through the night. They pulled it straight. They welded it up, and the next morning it was on the grid. You did not know it had been in an accident. Yeah. There was no gaffer tape anywhere. It was just looked pristine.
Yeah. It was great. And so we'd kind of done, previous to that, we'd done the Abu Dhabi race, the 12-hour race, which is kind of like a warm-up race or a first race to kind of get some miles on the car. And the car performed well. I think we finished 4th in the race. And then at Monza, I think we ended up finishing like maybe 6th or 7th, but
7th and 8th.
That's right, yeah. But the car was quick. I think qualified. I think Stephen qualified maybe in the top 4, so he was kind of on the second row. So the car was, you know, had a lot of potential, and but the car looked amazing, and the team looked really well. You know, again, it was very much a step above what everybody else was doing in GT3, and I think you know, kind of made a great impact. And of course, we then won the next race at Silverstone, which is obviously British car, home race on British soil. So it was a pretty much, you know, storming drive from Stephen, pretty much snatching the win on the last sort of couple of laps. But again, you know, great result. And for Bentley to be winning in that second era, kind of obviously winning the Le Mans era, to come into GT3 and then win again. You know, again, I mean, I know for me it was a fantastic experience, one that I really enjoyed, because it was the first time with the GT, back with Bentley again. And of course, we've got the picture of us on the podium. I think we're all, again, relieved probably again that we've actually done it. It was amazing.
Again, the expectations, nobody knew what to expect of us. You know, they really didn't think we could do it. And that's really the great satisfaction that you get out of putting a program together where there's doubt, and then proving that it can be done. And that was a great victory, that Silverstone victory.
And again, those battles in the boardroom won you that race, or at least got you to the grid.
I mean, that it was just what the company needed to, as a pick up the pride again, in the brand. You're competing against Ferraris and McLarens and Lamborghinis. It really engenders pride, and motorsport is an understated business tool. It really is effective in promoting a brand, getting brand values. I mean, in the GT program, we tried to do exactly what we did in Le Mans as well. The crew, the team, always well turned out. We had white gear, probably not always practical, but it looked good. You couldn't mistake a Bentley team member.
I remember interviewing you, Guy, in your brand new crisp white uniform with Malcolm at the Autosport show just before the Bentley program got going for a TV show. It's actually a rally TV show, ironically.
Right.
and it did look different. It really, you did look like you just walked out of a Bentley factory, which was,
Credit to Malcolm in an M Sport. I mean, they do sort of sign into those values as well. I mean, Malcolm is incredibly meticulous and, make sure everything looks right. So actually it was a great fit for us, because, always looked amazing. Everything was well turned out. But it's incredibly hard racing. GT3 racing, as we found, we kind of had a fairy tale start, but, throughout the years, following, it was just incredibly difficult, because with the BOP, it becomes quite a political melting pot, because you've got all these manufacturers that have all got to win races to keep.
For anyone listening who doesn't know what it is, it's a balance of power. So you've got cars with different drivetrains, different power units, and they're trying to balance it all out, aren't you? So your turbos being turned down, and you.
That's right. So everybody's it's kind of who shouts the loudest. It's like, well, we need to win some races or do well because our program's in jeopardy. So there's a lot of that going on, which again, as drivers, we're kind of kept out of. We hear what's going on, but people like Brian and Malcolm, they're the ones that have to go and argue the case week in, week out. We need some help. We need some more power. They've got this and we need that. So that's the kind of the unfortunate side of GT racing.
And the big OEMs have got people in the pit lane, haven't they? They've got people to walk down. And
Le Mans racing's a bit more kind of like you develop what you've got and you go and race it. GT3 is a bit more. You've got very parameters to work in, but it does create.
In Le Mans, the GTE, the balance of performance in GTE is. Sorry, I think I lost you there, but BOP in Le Mans is, I think, as opaque as it is in GT3. I think the GT3 is, you can still understand what they're doing to level a front-engined, a rear-engined, mid-engine car and get them to perform on the same level and try and keep it all understandable. But the same thing happens in GTE at Le Mans. When you see the Porsches getting 5 kilograms or Corvettes sandbagging and only pulling out the true colors and qualifying and then changing between qualifying and the race. So it's unfortunate when you've got cars of different from different base units to get them to compete on an equal basis. It's not a prototype class. So it is a necessary evil, unfortunately.
So I meant balance of performance, not balance of power, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So Brian, where does the sort of GT program stack up against Le Mans program for you personally? Where do you get the most? I think I've asked this before, but where do you get the most satisfaction, pride, enjoyment?
They're so different, Guy. What I really get this. The most satisfaction out of is when people think it can't be done. And in certainly in the GT3, there were more skeptics in the GT3 program than there were in the Le Mans program. The Le Mans program, we had a real crack team, and we made sure that we covered all the bases, done all the testing. In the GT3 program, we were pretty much, we had a rookie team a rookie manufacturer, and a car that everybody said, well, this isn't, this can't get down to the weight of a competitive GT car. So that very satisfying there to actually prove all the critics wrong.
Yeah.
You didn't have a sister program either, did you? So, the rest of the group wasn't doing anything that you could learn from or sort of piggyback on, like perhaps the Le Mans project started from.
Well, certainly the organisation and the lessons learnt in organising and getting the Le Mans team together, making sure it happened, and making sure everybody worked together. That was all valuable experience. Also testing and not compromising on testing is always a battle to make sure that the teams keep on testing and making sure that you resolve every problem. And then, of course, there's another aspect to it is selling cars to customers and making sure they have a good experience. And so, the GT3 is the most expensive Bentley that's sold. And so, when a guy spends that much money, the customer spends that much money, he needs to have a really good experience. Yeah. So there are quite a lot of aspects to GT3 racing that are not in prototype racing.
Yeah.
Prototype racing a little bit more pure. You're entirely in your own, you create your own destiny almost. With the amount of work you do in GT3 racing, there are a lot of other aspects to it.
Yeah. You guys, with your victories in the boardroom and on the racetrack, have really given provenance to Bentley that it probably had when it won Le Mans back in the 1930s. And I think that's something which a lot of people have said, and it's out there. And I'm not saying that for the first time, but you must feel a big part of that, both of you, when you see a Bentley on the road or you see somebody at Goodwood with their Bentley parked up in the car park. They're probably at Goodwood with their Bentley because you guys won at Le Mans at Silverstone.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. I hope so, because I think it's a great business tool, as I've said before, and it shouldn't be underrated. I know manufacturers tend to pull the plug on motorsport when things start going bad, because it seems to be a sport as such, but it is a tool. It's a business tool, and in the great world of marketing expenditure, maybe I'm biased, but it's really good value for money.
You see, now you can see he could sell sand to the Arabs, couldn't he? You see why these programs have gone through. You can see. I mean,
trouble is he's retired.
Exactly. I mean, the GT3 program, Brian. I mean, obviously, was a lot of fun. I mean, I certainly enjoyed it, and I think we all enjoyed it. I mean, we obviously had wins in America, we had wins in Europe. We came so close to winning the championship. Twice with Car 7, a couple of times with Car 8. But not quite got there, unfortunately. And of course, Spa was the one that we all wanted to win. I know you wanted to win desperately, and I think as drivers, we all, of course, wanted to win that Spa 24 hours. But I mean, you came very, very close a couple of times, but unfortunately, Lady Luck wasn't quite on our side. And you do need an element of luck and good fortune.
Yeah.
But we also got to race at Bathurst, which that for us was certainly for me as a driver. I never thought I'd ever get to race there. And when you were able to convince the board for us to go and race in Australia, where quite frankly, Bentley don't really sell many cars in Australia, but to get us to go there and race, and the Australians absolutely loved the sound of the V8. And again, we came very close during your time to win that race. And of course, they won the last one this year. Which was great for the brand to do that. But of course you've had, since then you've had Pikes Peak, you've had the Bentayga fastest SUV at Pikes Peak, the Continental GT as well, the new Continental GT, which is fastest production car at Pikes Peak. Is that right?
Yeah. So we've got the production car record last year. And the year before the SUV record, but getting the production car record, whether that was really special because it was the record was held by a Porsche 911 Turbo, and it's a production car, and so you're limited in what you can do, and there's no balance of performance. So that was interesting. What an event! It's just an incredible event that every motorsport enthusiast should have on their bucket list to to look at that. It's an event that's
definitely put that on the to-do list for sure.
Yeah.
So Paul, should we crack on with some questions? Some well.
Yeah, we've got some quick fire, but then there's. We have to apologise, don't we, for Jason's question?
So yeah, we'll come to this one in a minute. It's Jason Plato's question to you. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to ask it. I'm not quite sure how you're going to answer, but I said that I'd do it. But we'll get there in a minute. So I've just got some quick fire questions for you, Brian. So all you got to answer is the first thing that comes into your mind.
Right.
Or first answer which comes to your mind. So we've got Top Gear or Fifth Gear?
Top Gear. Yeah.
GT3 or Le Mans prototypes?
Oh, that's unfair.
That's choosing your favourite child, isn't it?
Probably right now GT3.
Okay.
Because it's closer to the production. Yeah.
Beach holiday or adventure holiday?
Sorry, say again.
Beach holiday or adventure holiday?
Beach. Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Oh no, the win rate is gone. We had 100% hit rate on dogs until now.
Oversteer or understeer?
Oversteer gets me into trouble, but I love it. Yeah. So
good.
Oversteer.
Birkin or Bonato?
Bonato.
Yeah. A V6 or V8?
V8.
Right. Okay. Here we go. Here we go, Paul. Here we go.
Jason had a couple of beers, hadn't he, by the time he asked this question?
Yeah. Jason had about five cigarettes during the podcast and about 5 beers. So of course, when we got to the end, his question. Now you don't have to answer this. Reveal the location, the car, and the age of your first bit of action.
Wow. Okay.
You don't have to answer that one.
The car. Well, yeah. Well, so fortunately, that was my then girlfriend and my current wife.
So that's good.
As I told you, I was into motocross, and the car was a mini pickup. How's that?
Interesting.
Front or back of the pickup.
And I had a motorcycle on the back.
Wow.
So I leave the rest to your imagination.
Legend. Great.
Thanks for that, Jason Plato.
Yeah, for Jason. So, Brian, did you have a question for our next guest? I think I know who it might be, but I'm not quite ready to reveal it yet.
Well, it's not probably not as adventurous as
it doesn't have to be.
As Jason. But yeah, what I want to know is in these current uncertain times, what would you do with your last tank of petrol?
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Fantastic. All right, Paul.
Well, we've done battling the racetrack on the rally stage, as I said earlier, and now in the boardroom. I, for one, was fascinated to see the link between what goes on before pen has even touched paper, or in the latest program, the computer keyboard has even done aerodynamics. Those battles really are the ones that you don't hear about. So for me and for Guy as well, it's important that I think that we went there and we've done that story, Guy, because it's such a big part of what you do out there on the racetrack as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it. I mean, Brian's obviously done a lot for my career, and there's a lot of work gone in behind the scenes over the years, and it's just, it's fascinating to hear it. I mean, I don't, you don't get to hear all the stories. You just, you arrive at the circuit, the car's there, and you go racing. As I said, it's all the work that gets you to the racetrack, and I think Brian's proved that he's a master at getting these programs up and running, and also executing and making it a winning program. So I know, obviously, Brian, now you've retired from Bentley Motorsport, so you're on to pastures new. You're building a Ford Escort, and we look forward to seeing you out in some rallies soon, and maybe I'll come and do some co-driving for you. And
there you go. Oh, that's brave.
It is brave, yeah, because I have been in the car with you before, so it is brave. But I'll have a few. If not, we'll have a few glasses of red wine afterwards and enjoy
That'll
it.
be good, yeah.
But thank you so much again, and really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me. Yeah.